Welcome to the Silicon Road Chess channel. This channel will show you how to use chess engines like Leela and Stockfish as powerful training partners in the opening, middle game and endgame, and help you improve your chess in exciting and modern ways. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler. I'm a 2-time British champion. I've been ranked in the world's top 50 for many years, and I'm also a prolific author. My most recent book was Game Changer, written together with Natasha Regan, which brought the amazing chess games of DeepMind's AlphaZero to the world. My next book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which will come out in the last part of 2021, is just like this channel, all about learning from and training with engines. This video is in our Engines and Opening series. We examine a sharp pawn sacrifice in the popular London system. We'll start off with a recent and important correspondence game, cited by Dutch grandmaster Erwin L'Ami in a recent theoretical article, and we'll finish with a game between young superstar Alireza Firouzja and Wesley So. In the middle we'll have a look at games by AlphaZero and Leela Zero, and we'll also have a look at what my engines have been cooking in this line as well. This video enriches the current state of theory with new insights and some clever move orders for both white and black. This video is for both exponents of the London system and also for black players looking for a sharp answer to this solid variation. Our story really starts around move 14, but we'll spend a few minutes playing through the moves leading up to that position. I like to do this even when reanalysing positions I know well. It helps me settle and focus on the position, while understanding the logic of what has gone on before often gives ideas for what to do next. We will start by examining the correspondence game Hoppenstein-Wolowice, Germany-Romania ICCF 2020. It's interesting to note that the first 15 moves were all played in a January 2018 AlphaZero Stockfish 8 game, the first time I ever saw this opening concept. Let's play through the moves. d4, d5, bishop f4, c5, e3, knight c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight bd2. The first key moment is here on the 5th move, where black plays queen b6. Now the London system is a solid opening. White develops a dark squared bishop outside the pawn chain, then reinforces the d4 pawn with c3 and e3. It's difficult to unbalance this setup once white achieves it, but there is a window of opportunity between white developing the bishop and white fully reinforcing the centre. And the black move to achieve this is queen b6. The drawback to bishop f4 is that the b2 pawn is left undefended. Queen b6 targets the b2 pawn and also adds pressure to the d4 pawn, taking the fight to white. So after d takes c5, queen takes b2 is the second key moment. Black doesn't keep the position tidy by recapturing on c5, but wrecks white's queenside pawn structure by following through with a plan and capturing on b2. In the ensuing play, white activates the rook on the half-open b-file, using free tempi against the exposed black queen to develop rapidly. Black, however, will quickly win the sickly c5 pawn, and the solid structure doesn't make it easy for white to secure concrete compensation for the pawn. Now bishop e7 is careful development, leaving c5 as a retreat square for the black queen if it's attacked. And now e4 is the third key moment. Again, I first saw this idea in the AlphaZero Stockfish 8 game. The tactical point is that capturing on e4 is too risky. After d takes e4, then knight c4, and the black queen is vulnerable to being trapped by rook b3, bishop d2 or bishop e5. Knight takes e4, knight takes c4, d takes c4 is met by the excellent move bishop takes c6 check, takes bishop d6. when e takes f3, bishop takes c7, king takes c7, queen d6 check, king f6, rook b3 is absolutely terrible for black. Bishop f6 is slightly better for black, but after knight d2, white has fantastic compensation. Knight takes e4 is coming in, and the bishop on d6 prevents the black king from castling. AlphaZero's main idea, however, was strategical. After castles e5, AlphaZero was happy to reach a structure reminiscent of the French defence. A pawn down, of course, but AlphaZero was unconcerned about material in such structures. AlphaZero seemed to feel that white's position had more improvement potential than black's, and that these long-term prospects were worth more than just a pawn. The key attacking unit in this position is the e5 pawn. While this point remains strong, white's long-term attacking potential is powerful. The e5 pawn takes away the defensive square f6 from the black pieces. This weakens black's defence of g7 and h7, while opening access to the white pieces to attacking squares such as g4 and h5. Of course, the pawn on e5 also secures an outpost on d6 for a white knight. After knight b3, queen b4, hitting the white bishops on b5 and f4 is a typical engine find from Stockfish to extricate the black queen from the cage white is trying to build around it. Knight bd4 was played in our correspondence game, queen takes c5, and rook e1 takes us to the first critical position that we're going to examine in this video. Let's take a few minutes to understand what's going on. Black is a pawn up, has a solid central structure, and has castled safely. The only tricky aspect to black's position is the exposed position of the queen on c5 and the logjam of queenside pieces, knight on c6 and d7 and bishop on c8, getting in each other's way. White has a space advantage and a lead in development. Even white's queen's rook has excellent prospects due to the sacrifice of the pawn in front of it. And this is a favourite AlphaZero technique, as readers of Game Changer will know. However, white's pieces, though active, don't make a particularly concentrated impression. They all look quite well placed, but it isn't easy to point to one concrete threat. So in the next few moves, white will try and link pieces together to generate concrete threats, while black will try to develop its queenside pieces and increase the harmony in its position. In New in Chess Yearbook 139, the Dutch grandmaster and theoretician Erwin L'Ami demonstrated a recent correspondence game, Hoppenstein-Wolowici, from this position. Erwin was very pessimistic of black's chances and put white's play forward as the possible refutation of black's play. Let's play through that game and see what happened. So black took on d4, knight takes d4, and now a6. This was also played in AlphaZero Stockfish 8, but here both AlphaZero and young Leela, a little bit later, both played bishop d3, retargeting the pieces towards the king side. Hoppenstein, however, grabbed the pawn back with bishop d7, bishop takes d7, and rook takes b7. Let's have a look at what happened here. The rook on b7 attacks the bishop on d7. So black played rook fd8 to defend it, and now white played the very nice move rook b3. The rook looked strong on b7, but it was liable to be exchanged by a move like rook ab8 from black. So rook b3 intends to redeploy the rook over on the king side, either to g3 or to h3. Black tried to get some counterplay on the queen side. Played a defensive move here. White played h4, the typical AlphaZero move that we see all the time everywhere. The pawn can be taken, but this would then open up the h-file for white's attack. So black prefers to try and get some counterplay on the queen side. Well, in actual fact, black grabs a pawn there. c3 defends the knight on d4, puts the pawn on a defended square, and keeps black's pieces at bay. Rook to b8, queen to g4, and here black decided that some defence of the king's side was necessary. Queen c8, rook f3, and queen d8. Here white played a very strong plan. Bishop to h6, covering the f8 square, restricting the black king. Rook a4, and now king h2. A very typical move that we often saw from AlphaZero. Putting the king to safety, getting it out of the way of random checks before the final assault. Queen e8, rook f4, rook c4, rook e3. This isn't a fast attack by white by any means, but black always seems to be about a move too late in everything that he does. Rook bc8, rook ef3, takes on c3, takes on f7, takes, queen f4 check, king g8, and now the surprising move, bishop g5. The bishop looks extremely strong on h6, but it's even stronger on f6. After rook f7, queen g5, king f8, queen h6 check, black lost the g6 pawn. And then after rook c4, queen to g8 check, bishop f8, the move knight f3 was decisive. The knight is coming into g5, after which black is going to win another exchange. And white converted the game very, very efficiently. Without getting into specifics, it seems that white's rerouting of the rook from b7 to g3 created significant pressure against black's kingside, while black didn't really manage to devise counterplay that would distract white's pieces from that purpose. The result was a slow-moving but inexorable attack, and that's a scenario that we saw many times in AlphaZero Stockfish 8 games. The game did make me wonder, however, which engine black was using to assist him. The reason I say this is that both Stockfish and Leela recommend the excellent move 17 bishop a4 in reply to rook takes b7. There are several good points to this move. The bishop covers b3, preventing white from redeploying the b7 rook over to the kingside. The bishop also attacks c2. If it captures the c2 pawn, the bishop will be able to help to defend the black kingside, for example by covering h7 or g6. And black doesn't waste a rook defending a piece and is ready to challenge for the b-file directly. The only drawback is that the power of the white rook along the 7th rank is temporarily enhanced, allowing white to try and exploit the awkward defence of the bishop e7 by the queen on c5. Now, most engine games end here in a draw by repetition after bishop e3, queen a3, bishop c1, queen c5, bishop e3, queen a3. Clearly the engines don't see any advantage for white. However, Leela did try the interesting queen g4. This sets up a dangerous attacking formation in which white's queen, knight, dark squared bishop and rook on b7 converge around the e6, f7, g7 and, well, that's about it. Black cannot challenge for the b-file directly with rook b8 because of knight takes e6. And after f takes e6, queen takes e6 check, we're attacking the bishop on e7, and if rook f7, then rook takes b8. However, black, Stockfish in this case, came up with a stunning idea. Black played h5, and after queen takes h5, played rook ab8. And this idea is strategical genius. Black needs to exchange off a pair of rooks to secure its position. With just one pair of rooks on the board, white cannot both attack black's kingside and also secure its rearguard against black's counterplay. And h5 gives up a pawn to distract the queen away from the attack on g7 and make rook ab8 possible. In fact, this whole strategical idea of exchanging a pair of rooks also applies to the correspondence game that we looked at earlier. My engines demonstrated much more successful defence of black's position by exchanging a pair of rooks quickly via the b file rather than just grabbing the a2 pawn. So a game that I played between Stockfish and Leela on my hardware proceeded as follows. Rook to c7, bishop to d8, rook to a7, queen to c3, attacking the rook on e1, also threatening the move bishop b6, forking the rook on a7 and the bishop on, and the knight on d4. So white played queen d1 to defend the rook on e1 and the knight on d4, bishop a5, hitting the rook on e1, rook f1, and now this excellent move queen c4. Black defends the pawn on a6 and threatens simply bishop b6 when the rook on a7 is very short of squares. So white restarted the attack with queen g4, looking for something like bishop h6 to attack g7. And now black played bishop c2, demonstrating the point of playing bishop a4. The bishop comes back to defend the king's side from g6, for example. Rook c1, white pinned the bishop on c2, but after rook b1 takes, rook b7, bishop d3, black had survived the first onslaught. White prepared the second onslaught. Leela played h4, looking to move this rook's pawn up to h5 and h6 and attack the black king's side. But now Leela came up, or rather Stockfish came up, with a very precise way of dealing with white's attack. Bishop c3, h5, bishop takes d4, bishop takes d4, queen c1 check, and after king h2, bishop e2. A lovely little move here. And after queen takes e2, queen f4 check, g3, queen takes d4. Black was over the worst. All that was left was the major pieces, and black's solid king side means that black held the draw without too much difficulty. So all in all, I think that Erwin's pessimism about black's position was excessive, though I certainly agree with him that black needs to be extremely accurate in the following moves to reach safety. I'd now like to talk a bit about move orders. If we go back to move 14, then black has two possible move orders. Now there's knight takes d4, knight takes d4, a6, which we have seen, which gives white the possibility of bishop d3, like AlphaZero or Leela Zero, or bishop takes d7, like Hoppenstein played. However, black also has another possibility on move 14. Black can actually play the immediate a6. My engines can't find anything better than bishop d3. And then after knight takes d4, we are back into the AlphaZero game without allowing the extra possibility of bishop takes d7. So I thought originally that 14a6 allowed black to sidestep Hoppenstein's 16 bishop takes d7 idea completely. However, then I noticed the recent online game Firouzja against So. In that game, on move 13, instead of knight bd4, Firouzja played the clever knight fd4. In this way, white covers the threats against both his bishops and threatens to trap the black queen on b4 with bishop d2, while keeping the c5 pawn protected. With this move order, black must play knight takes d4, queen c5. And after rook e1, a6, white once again has the choice of bishop takes d7 or bishop d3. So Firouzja followed AlphaZero and Leela Zero and played bishop to d3. The knight on d4 is taboo due to bishop takes h7 check tricks, so black plays g6 to threaten queen takes d4. Now white has two possibilities. Move the knight to b3, gaining a tempo against the black queen, intending to quickly activate the white queen on the king side. That's AlphaZero's plan. Or move the knight to f3 and involve it in the kingside attack, which will start with a march of the rook's pawn, h4 to h5. A young well, version 17 Leela, we're now at version 28, played this idea at the start of 2018. So for knight b3 from white, you can see some in-depth analysis of the AlphaZero Stockfish 8 game on the Game Changer channel, so take a look at that one to get a feel for white's chances. I want to focus in this video on knight f3 because it was Firouzja's choice against Wesley So in March 2021. I wondered whether it was over-the-board improvisation or deep analysis. The young Leela Zero, as I said, had played this already, and it was quite a game. So I wondered whether that might possibly have been Firouzja's reason for trying 17 knight f3. Let's take a quick look at that Leela game. Leela was white against the Anskach engine. So after knight f3, black played b5, queen d2, rook e8, h4, bishop b7, bishop g5, bishop f8, and now knight h2. Leela is aiming to bring the knight into the attack via g4 and then either h6 or f6. Black stopped this with h5 and Leela played g4. And strange enough, we often saw this type of attack in AlphaZero's games. When black met the march of the rook's pawn, h4 with h5, then AlphaZero put a bishop on g5 and then aimed for this g4 push. Bishop g7, g takes h5, knight takes c5, h6, takes. And here Anskach probably made the more or less decisive mistake, trying to go after the exchange at the cost of its dark squares. Well, white's light squares don't look that great either, but the dark squares are actually much more important. And after rook b8, I think the stunning move here was king g2. White's idea is simply to play the king to g3 in order to support knight g4 into f6. It's a wonderful move. And after rook f8, king g3, queen takes d3, check, rook e3, queen f5, rook f3, white's next move will be knight g4. So black gave up the bishop on b7 to, well, gain a little bit of time, but after bishop f4, queen a1, bishop d6, Leela finished the game off without any problem. Bishop takes f8 will leave white a piece up. The rook on f8 can't leave its post because f7 is so weak. So Leela's play was pretty good, but in general the Anskach defence felt a little slow. Leela was already attacking the black king with g4 before black had got any counterplay started. And well, I ran a number of long play matches between my engines, and they preferred a much more concrete plan of defence, which I really liked. So after knight f3, my engines played b5, and after queen d2, the excellent move b4. h4 follows, and now a5, bishop h6, rook e8, h5, and bishop a6. And black intends to exchange off the light squared bishops with bishop takes d3. Now, this manoeuvre has several good points. First of all, black reduces white's attacking potential by removing an attacker of the g6 pawn. Secondly, black opens the c-file for rapid counterplay. After queen f4, bishop takes d3, c takes d3, bishop f8, bishop g5, bishop g7, rook bc1, queen b6, d4, and then a4. The position remained very sharp, but black had a lot of counterplay with his queenside pawns. So how did the Firouzja against So game actually go? Well, Wesley also played b5. Firouzja played h4 instead of queen d2. And now Wesley played bishop b7. Now there's one thing that you know when a human player plays a move like bishop b7, then you know what's coming next, d4, to open up the line of the bishop. So if white blocks that in the end with bishop e4, then, well, black will achieve the exchange of light squared bishops anyway. Now, my engines are not very impressed with white's position. they all want to make a draw in actual fact with this cunning idea. A4, B4, C3. And after queen takes c3, we have rook c1, queen a3, rook a1, and the queen can't get out and it's a draw. So Firouzja played the much more aggressive knight g5. However, after bishop takes g5, bishop g5, d4, activating the light-squared bishop, black seemed to be fine, and Wesley played a great game for quite a long time. h5, queen g3, knight c5. Not afraid of weakening these dark squares. Black's simply going to take the knight on d3 and cover the g6 square. So bishop f6, king h7, and here Firouzja tried to keep the light squared bishop, going for some sort of vague attacking chances. But after rook e1, queen takes c2, bishop d3, this is actually just winning for black in principle. Only for a human player in a rapid game, it is actually very scary. Well, Wesley didn't actually take any chances and just took a draw by repetition. Although the engines do suggest a lot of ideas to just ignore white's coming attack and survive. But in principle, it's clear that that black is doing pretty well in this line. So probably knight f3 is not the best, and we should really have a look at AlphaZero's knight b3 at this stage. In conclusion, therefore, I suppose the first point is that Hoppenstein's bishop takes d7 is very interesting, but Leela and Stockfish's idea of bishop a4 seems to neutralize it. And the key strategy for black, of course, is to exchange off a pair of rooks. Once this happens, white does not have the firepower to both create kingside threats and absorb black's queenside counterplay. Now the second point is that the clever move order, a6, instead of knight takes d4, sidesteps this idea. The third point is that Firouzja's even cleverer knight fd4 sidesteps this sidestep. And I suppose the final point is that in this position, after bishop d3, g6, then knight b3 from AlphaZero still looks like the most promising approach for white. Instead of knight b3, knight f3, as played by Leela Zero and then by Firouzja, seems to give black good play after b5, queen d2, and now b4. Black's key plan being to exchange off the light squared bishop with bishop a6 and bishop takes d3. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you've learnt a lot about the London system. I certainly did by analysing these games. If you like the video, please like it. And if you like this channel, please subscribe to it. We're going to be doing a lot of work on engine analysis in all phases of the game. So if you enjoy that, that's what this channel is all about. Thanks very much for watching.